Mark Cuban likes to portray himself as a laid-back, fun billionaire that you'd love to have a beer with, but that's farthest from the truth. If you're watching this video, you're probably a fan of Mark Cuban, and I can tell you too, I'm a huge fan of Mark Cuban, and what I find interesting is how these people build fortunes. So, for example, the personality he portrays on TV as fun and laid back, and he'd be great to work for and be such a nice boss. But the reality is very, very different. And we'll go over a few things in this video, and I think you'll find that very interesting. It's not a surprise that he's been sued multiple times over the years by employees. What's shocking is why he's been sued. Now let's go back all the way back before he was famous, before he made his first $1 billion. These articles you can't even find online anymore. I've been following Mark Cuban, since he sold broadcast.com to Yahoo for several $1 billion and got on the public radar. I've always found him very, very interesting. So at the time I would read everything about him. I'd listen to articles, or I'd listen to interviews with him, and he talked about a lot of things that he will not talk about now. So, for example, when he was building one of his companies, he would, and the portrayal that we see now is that he'd be great to work for, and you could just stroll in the office, and he'd say, "Oh, okay, it's great. Just show up when you want to, live when you want to, and he'd pay you good." Well, that was not the case. So, for example, he talked about how he had rows of desks of salespeople lined up in his office. So just rows of desks of people on the phone making calls, selling his stuff. And he talked about all he would do all day is just walk up and down those rows. And what he would do is he would yell at people if they weren't on the phone. He'd yell at them, and he would make sure they're on the phone, and he'd make sure they're talking to customers, and he'd make sure they're making the right sales pitches. And if someone wasn't on the phone, or someone was taking too long of a break, he would yell at them, embarrass them, whatever it might be. And on the flip side of it, he talked about how he'd walk around with a wad of cash, and he would hand out money to people making sales as a bonus. And he'd hand out, for a good pitch, or maybe a higher than normal sale, or whatever it might be. So he also rewarded them, but he was probably not an easy guy to work for, because you had to work from the minute you got in to the minute you left, and you had to work hard. And you say, well, of course you do, but a lot of us at our jobs don't work that hard. I mean, some of us do, but a lot of us slack a lot. Now fast forward, he made $1 billion, and then he portrays himself as a fun guy, and he's great. He's just your buddy who got rich, right? So it'd be great to work for your buddy. Well, even after he made his $1 billion, that was not the case. One of the things he got sued from a Mavericks GM, Donnie Nelson, for wrongful termination, and there was a big ordeal with that, and we're not going to get into that in this video. That's not what this video is about. But there's been multiple claims that he's covered up sexual harassment and harassment of other employees. So again, he's not a great guy to work for. I mean, and again, I'm a big fan of Mark Cuban. And I do think, and one of the things you're probably thinking, well, he's run business for 30 years or 40 years, whatever it might be. He's had thousands of employees. He's run big companies. Of course he's going to have problems, and you can't micromanage he's not going to know every single thing that goes on in the organization, and I agree with that. I think to a degree, there's no way you can know everything, no matter what people think, no matter what people say. But the thing I would add is that there's a way to handle things. Like, there was an incident that he had where something was reported to him, and the employee was concerned about it because it bothered the employee, and Mark Cuban blew it off, and just the report talked about how he rolled his eyes and discarded the item he found. And the employee went to HR and complained, and still it was kind of blown off. And So that kind of shows a little bit deeper that he's just, again, these guys are all about the money. And that's not a judgment. It's not saying, okay, he's right for it or he's wrong for it. That's just how he is. That's how these billionaires are. So, no matter the portrayal they portray themselves as, they're all about the money. And there's an old saying that says, when someone says it's not about the money, it's always about the money. So these guys are just, they're not going to stop. They're going to keep making the money, and he's not going to be an easy guy to work for, no matter what you see on TV, and no matter what he talks about on Shark Tank, and how he comes off as an aw shucks kind of guy, just like Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett. And again, we're jumping topics, but he seems like the nice grandpa image, and he's a shark. He's an absolute killer in business. But these guys have, a lot of these guys have teams of PR people carefully crafting these images that we read about and we see on the news. And real quick as we wrap it up, and subscribe. If you got this far in the video, please subscribe, because I'll keep bringing up content that you like.